had just started. The soft chords of Can't Help Falling in Love played gently in the background. I stood there in my wedding gown, hand in hand with the love of my life, surrounded by friends and family, feeling like, finally, this was going to be my moment. Just as the officiant cleared his throat and asked if anyone had any objections, the back doors of the chapel slammed open with a loud bang. And there she was, Amy, my older sister in a white dress. White, floor-length, sparkling, attention-grabbing. She strutted down the aisle like she was the bride. A hushed gasp spread across the room like a ripple on a pond. I felt my stomach tighten. My mother covered her mouth. My husband-to-be, Jason, turned and muttered, "What the hell?" Amy didn't slow down. She walked right up to us, smiled sweetly, then turned to the guests and said, "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but before you let her marry this man, you all deserve to know the truth." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Amy pulled out her phone. "This man cheated on my sister. With multiple women. I have proof." She waved her screen toward the guests, flipping through blurry screenshots and vague text messages with no names or timestamps. Jason looked at me, horrified. "This is fake," he said firmly. "This is all lies." I couldn't speak. My hands were trembling. For a moment, everything stopped. The flowers, the music, the laughter, it all died. "Amy, what are you doing?" I finally whispered, my voice cracking. She shrugged, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "Saving you from heartache, sis. You'll thank me later." But I saw it. That glint in her eye. It wasn't concern. It was victory. She wasn't saving me. She was stealing from me again. And right then, something inside me snapped. Not in rage, not in tears, but in resolve. I calmly turned to the officiant and said, "Can we pause the ceremony?" Then I turned back to Amy, and with my heart pounding, I said coldly, "You really shouldn't have done that." You might think what my sister did at my wedding was a one-time meltdown, but no. That was the grand finale of a show she had been directing for nearly 8 years. And I was always her favorite target. It started small, like when I got accepted into my dream college. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and it was the first time I truly felt proud of myself. I had worked hard for that acceptance letter. But before I could even tell my parents, Amy had already announced that she was moving in with her boyfriend in New York. Just like that, everyone's attention was on her. No one even asked me how I felt. Then came my first real job interview. I was nervous and excited. I told Amy about it, and she smiled and said, "That's cute. I mean, it's just an assistant role, but hey, we all start somewhere, right?" That same week, she showed up to dinner wearing a luxury brand suit and casually mentioned her boyfriend had just proposed. Mom spent the evening gushing over her ring. It didn't stop there. My 25th birthday, she accidentally booked her engagement party on the same day. My college graduation, she announced her pregnancy right in the middle of our family dinner after the ceremony. And my first promotion, she cried on the phone, saying she was having a tough time in her marriage and needed support. Somehow, she always made sure that my big moments became footnotes in her story. But even with all that, I tried. I showed up for her baby shower. I babysat. I lent her money when things got rough financially. I was the supportive sister, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd see how much I cared. I told myself she was just going through things, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But the truth? Amy fed off the spotlight, and if I ever tried to share it, she found a way to knock it down. The worst was when I met Jason. We were happy, genuinely, and when we got engaged, I was glowing. But instead of being happy for me, Amy laughed and said, "Wow, already? I thought he'd wait a little longer. You sure he's not rushing it?" It was subtle but cutting, and over the months leading to our wedding, she ramped it up. She offered to help with planning, but then canceled meetings. She criticized my dress. She told our mom that my flowers were cheap looking. She even asked Jason privately if I was emotionally stable. Still, I wanted to believe she'd behave on the day, that she'd finally let me have one moment. But she didn't. She stole it. And while everyone thought I froze at the altar because I was heartbroken or confused, I wasn't. I was calculating. I was done playing the quiet sister. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was 8 years of wounds she never thought I'd repay. And standing there in front of all our friends and family, I realized something. If Amy wanted attention, she was about to get all of it, just not in the way she expected. The wedding reception was supposed to be the happiest evening of my life. But instead of walking in with my husband on my arm, I stood at the door alone, shaking, half from anger, half from heartbreak. The crowd was buzzing, not with joy, but with confusion. Some guests were whispering, others pretending like nothing happened. But everyone knew something was off. Amy had pulled her final stunt. Just an hour before the ceremony, she pulled Jason aside. She told him I was hiding things, that I was emotionally unstable, that I had cheated on him a year ago and paid someone to keep it quiet. She even faked screenshots. Jason, being the loyal man he was, didn't believe her, but he was shaken. Enough to confront me minutes before we were set to walk down the aisle. And in those few minutes, I saw everything crystal clear. This wasn't mischief. This was war. And Amy came dressed for battle. I managed to convince Jason of the truth. Thank God he trusted me. But by then, the damage was done. I couldn't walk down that aisle pretending everything was fine. So we delayed the ceremony, regrouped, and replanned the evening. But not before I made one thing clear. Amy was not welcome at the celebration. When I told my parents what she'd done, I expected outrage. I expected Mom to pull her aside, or Dad to demand answers. But instead, Mom gasped and said, "Oh, honey, she probably just panicked. She didn't mean harm." And Dad? He sighed and muttered, "Let's not make this a scene. It's your wedding day." That was the moment. That was when the final layer peeled off, and I saw it, clear as daylight. They never truly stood up for me. Ever. Not when I was overshadowed, not when I was humiliated, and certainly not now. Amy had always been the favorite. The dramatic one, the attention seeker, the poor thing they always made excuses for. I had spent years wondering if maybe I was imagining it, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But no, it was real. My family didn't just ignore her behavior, they enabled it. Even as I asked the staff to escort Amy out, my mom cried and begged me not to ruin the night. Dad said I was being dramatic, that I should just let it go. And Amy? She stood near the doors, faking tears and muttering loud enough for people to hear. I was just trying to protect him from a mistake. I watched as guests whispered. Some pitied her. Others looked at me like I was the villain. And for a moment, I almost crumbled. Almost. But Jason stood beside me, held my hand, and whispered, "Let them talk. I know the truth, and I've got you." That was all I needed. We walked back into the hall, announced the delay, and held a smaller, private ceremony with our closest friends and Jason's side of the family. And you know what? It was beautiful, honest, real. But the damage my sister caused didn't stop at the wedding. No, that came the next morning when her world began to fall apart. And for once, it wasn't because of me. It was because of her. Because she picked the wrong day, the wrong time, and the wrong people to mess with. And karma? Karma showed up right on schedule. The day after my wedding, the fallout from Amy's actions didn't just end. In fact, it was just beginning. While I was recovering from the chaos of what had been an unexpected nightmare, Amy's life was about to spiral out of control. The phone call came around noon. It was from Jason's brother, who had witnessed the confrontation between Amy and me before the ceremony. Amy's husband, Trevor. "He's gone," he said. I didn't quite understand what he meant. Gone? What do you mean? I mean, he packed up and left. He took all his stuff, his clothes, his things. Even took the dog. He left her. The shock hit me like a punch to the gut. Amy had always been the center of attention, and she had always seemed to have it all. The perfect husband, the picture-perfect life, or so everyone thought. Trevor was the quiet one, always keeping to himself and keeping his cool. But something about what happened the day before, something shifted. The things Amy had said to me, the lies she'd spread, and the way she manipulated everyone around her, it finally came crashing down on her. Trevor had listened to her accusations the night of the wedding. He didn't confront me directly, but he was shaken. After all, he trusted Amy above all else. And yet, he was hearing whispers of a woman who might not be the person he thought she was. But Trevor was no fool. That morning, while Amy was busy dealing with the aftermath of her failed attempt at ruining my wedding, Trevor had taken matters into his own hands. He didn't want to play games. He didn't want to be married to a woman who had no respect for her family, No loyalty, no honesty. He called Amy's bluff. He confronted her with the truth, the entire truth. And when he did, he found out what Amy had been hiding for years. Her secrets, her lies, her manipulations. Everything came to light. She had been deceitful, not just about me, but about their relationship. There were stories of infidelity, of emotional abuse, and of her treating Trevor as nothing more than an accessory to her social status. Trevor had finally had enough. He didn't need to stick around and deal with her chaos anymore. "I'm done, Amy," he told her, his voice steady but final. "I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the games. I can't do this anymore." Amy's reaction was classic. She broke down. She tried to beg. She cried. She said things like, "I need you. Don't leave me. You don't understand what's going on." But Trevor was unmoved. He packed his things quietly, grabbed the dog, and walked out the door. The rumors of their breakup started circulating by the afternoon. And by evening, Amy's world had completely shattered. It was almost poetic how the universe had a way of balancing things out. Amy had tried to destroy my happiness, tried to ruin my wedding, but in doing so, she had destroyed everything she had built over the last few years. Her marriage, her supposed perfect life, was gone in an instant. Trevor's departure was the ultimate karma for everything she had done. She had lied to him, deceived him, and used him for years, all while pretending to be the ideal wife. But now, there was no more pretending. The most surprising part? No one was shocked. Not even her closest friends. They'd seen it coming for a while. They knew Amy had a pattern of sabotaging the lives of those closest to her. What shocked everyone, however, was the speed of it all. One moment, she was the queen of the family, the center of attention, and in the blink of an eye, she was alone. Completely alone. As I watched all this unfold, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. The weight of what she had done to me, the years of manipulation, humiliation, and control, had finally caught up with her. Amy wasn't untouchable. She wasn't above the consequences of her actions. She wasn't the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. No, she was just another person who had betrayed the trust of those closest to her, and now she had nothing left. In the end, her marriage had fallen apart because of the very same behaviors she had used to try and ruin my life. And for the first time, I could breathe again. The dust hadn't even settled from my wedding day when Amy called me. The call came late, just as I was settling in for the night, when all I wanted was peace and quiet. "Amy!" I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. She was crying. "You ruined everything. Do you realize what you've done?" I couldn't believe my ears. Here she was, the one who had tried to destroy my happiness, and now she was blaming me for the chaos in her life. The audacity was beyond anything I could have imagined. But I wasn't shocked. After all, this was Amy, always playing the victim, always twisting the narrative to make herself look like the martyr. "Amy, I didn't do anything. You did this. You chose to lie, to manipulate, to ruin what was supposed to be a happy day. You made it all about you." She sniffled. "But I thought you'd understand. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know how hard it is for me. I've always been second to you, and now this? You're making my life impossible." It was like she was speaking a different language. I was struggling to keep my patience. After all these years, I was supposed to be the one understanding her? I was the one who had suffered because of her actions, and yet she still believed she had a right to manipulate me? "Amy, you've made every significant moment in my life about you. You've manipulated everyone around us to make sure you were the center of attention. And now, you're trying to turn the tables on me? No, I'm done." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, but I could hear her breathing heavily, trying to compose herself. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Trevor's gone. My friends are avoiding me. I have nothing left. And all because of you." I felt a knot in my stomach, but it wasn't sympathy. It was the culmination of everything I had been holding back for the past 8 years. It wasn't my fault that everything had unraveled for her. She had done this to herself, and now she had to face the consequences. You need to face the truth, Amy. The truth about yourself and the way you've treated people. You can't keep running from it. You can't keep pretending you're the victim. What happened to Trevor was a direct result of the lies you told him, and me. You need to take responsibility for it. For the first time, I could hear a small crack in her voice. She was starting to realize that I wasn't going to let her walk away from this. I didn't want this to happen, she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Amy, you've been lying for years. You've hurt everyone you've ever come into contact with. And now you want to make it my fault? I've had enough of your games. The truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Amy had built a house of cards, and with one push it had all come crashing down. I didn't care about her apologies anymore. I didn't care about her excuses. What I cared about was making sure she understood that her actions had consequences. You ruined my wedding, I said, my voice growing firmer. But what you've done to yourself is a reflection of who you are. You've spent your life lying, manipulating, and controlling those around you. Now it's your turn to face the music. There was a moment of silence again, but this time it wasn't filled with tears or excuses. It was filled with realization. Finally, Amy whispered, I don't know what to do now. I sighed, my anger simmering beneath the surface, but I kept my voice calm. I don't know what you're going to do either, Amy. But whatever happens, it's on you. You can't blame anyone else anymore. The person you've become is the result of your choices. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had finally said everything I needed to say. Amy's manipulation, her selfishness, and her toxic behavior had affected me for years. But now it was over. She couldn't control me anymore. She couldn't control anyone anymore. And I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, it was going to be a long, hard road for her. The consequences had only just begun, and there was no one left to save her but herself. The days that followed felt like a fog, thick with both relief and lingering tension. Amy's world was collapsing around her, and no one, absolutely no one, was there to help her pick up the pieces. She had finally pushed everyone away, and now she had to deal with the consequences. It didn't take long for Trevor to finally speak out. The man she had married, the one who had stood by her through thick and thin, was done. He had caught wind of her lies, the ones she had fed him for years, and now there was no turning back. Trevor wasn't the kind of guy to make hasty decisions. He was calm, methodical, and had always been a bit of a perfectionist. But when he found out about the web of deceit Amy had been spinning, something inside of him snapped. He left her that night, without a word, without any explanation. Just like that, he packed his things and walked out the door. Amy called me again the next day. This time, her voice was completely different. It wasn't the crying, manipulative voice I had grown so used to. This time it was cold and empty. She was alone. Trevor's gone, she said flatly. He left me. I could hear the shakiness in her voice, but I wasn't going to give her any sympathy. Not this time. She had destroyed her own life, and now she was facing the fallout. I told you this was coming, I said, my voice calm but firm. You can't keep living in a world of lies and manipulation. People aren't going to stick around forever. Trevor was your last chance, Amy, and now he's gone. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. I could feel her desperation growing, but it wasn't going to make me change my mind. Why didn't you warn me? She asked. Why didn't you help me? I almost laughed. You're asking me why I didn't help you? After everything you've done to me? You ruined my wedding, Amy. You tried to destroy my happiness. You've spent years tearing down everyone around you, and now you want me to feel sorry for you. Her breath hitched, and I could hear the faint sobs starting again. But this time, they didn't have the same effect on me. I wasn't going to fall for her games anymore. Not after everything she had put me through. You've got to face the truth, Amy, I continued, my voice unwavering. You did this to yourself. You pushed people away, you lied, you manipulated, and now you've lost everything. You don't get to play the victim anymore. I could hear the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the phone, and for the first time, I could sense that Amy was realizing the gravity of her actions. She had played this game for so long, always getting away with it, but now the truth was inescapable. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. I don't know what to do. The sadness in her voice almost made me feel something, almost. But I couldn't let it. Not after everything. You can't fix this, Amy. You can't fix what you've done. But maybe you can start by being honest with yourself. Stop lying to everyone, including yourself. Maybe then you'll have a chance to rebuild your life. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. There was nothing more I could do for her. I had warned her. I had tried to be the bigger person. But in the end, it wasn't me who had destroyed her life, it was her own choices. As the days passed, the fallout from Amy's actions continued to unravel. Trevor filed for divorce within 24 hours of leaving her, and word spread quickly through the family. People who had once supported her now turned their backs, refusing to get involved in her mess. It was clear that Amy's reputation was in tatters, and she had no one to blame but herself. She had spent years building a house of cards, thinking she could control everyone around her. But in the end, that same house collapsed, leaving her with nothing but the wreckage of her own making. I didn't have to do anything else. The consequences of Amy's actions were far greater than anything I could have planned. And as I watched her world crumble, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not because I had destroyed her, but because she had destroyed herself. She had underestimated the power of honesty, of integrity, and of the strength that comes from doing the right thing. And now, she had nothing left but the emptiness of her own lies. As the days dragged on, the once invincible Amy was now a shell of the person she used to be. The woman who had caused so much chaos in everyone's lives was now sitting in her empty house, alone and broken. She had tried calling me again and again, but I refused to pick up. What was there left to say? Amy's world had come crashing down. She was no longer surrounded by the lies she'd been so comfortable weaving for years. Now, she was faced with the ugly truth. Her manipulations, her selfishness, her refusal to see beyond herself had cost her everything. And the one person who had always been there for her, the one person she never thought would turn away, was now the one who had cut her out completely. But Amy wasn't going to give up. She wasn't going to admit defeat. So, when she finally showed up at my doorstep, confident woman she used to be, I was shocked. She had changed. Her eyes were hollow, her shoulders slumped, and the facade of arrogance she had carried for so long had completely fallen away. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking. There was no pleading in it, no anger, just a raw desperation that I had never heard before. I studied her for a long moment, weighing whether or not to even open the door. But in the end I did. I couldn't help but be curious about what she had to say after everything that had happened. "What do you want, Amy?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into her web of deceit. Not anymore. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the room. I don't know what to do anymore," she admitted, her voice soft now, almost vulnerable. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I crossed my arms, not sure whether to be angry or just pity her at this point. "You did more than ruin everything, Amy. You destroyed your marriage. You destroyed relationships, and you tried to ruin my wedding, the most important day of my life. You were so focused on yourself that you didn't care about anyone else." She flinched at my words, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. She knew I was right. I don't know why I did it. I've always felt like I needed to be the best to get everything. I've always wanted what I couldn't have, and I took it from you, didn't I? I nodded. "Yes, you did. You took everything from me and made me feel like I wasn't even worth your time. You never cared about anyone else. You just wanted to win. But in the end, you lost everything." Amy's face crumpled as she sat down on the couch, her hands shaking. "I never thought it would go this far. I thought I could control everything. I thought Trevor would always be there. But now," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Regret didn't fix what she had done. "Amy, you've spent years manipulating everyone around you. You never stopped to think about how your actions affected others. Now you're facing the consequences of your choices, and no amount of regret is going to change that." Her shoulders shook as she cried, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered everything she had done to me, the hurt she had caused, and the way she had tried to tear apart my happiness. That sympathy faded quickly. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you." "Sorry doesn't fix anything," I replied flatly. "Sorry won't bring back what you've destroyed. You've hurt too many people to think that a simple apology can fix this. You need to start facing the truth, Amy." She wiped her eyes, nodding. "I don't know where to start." "The truth," I said. "Start with the truth. Stop lying to yourself and everyone else. Take responsibility for what you've done. And maybe, just maybe, you can begin to rebuild your life. For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of the situation hanging between us. Amy was no longer the woman who had tried to ruin my life. Now, she was just a broken person, someone who had lost everything because of her own choices. As I watched her sit there, tears streaming down her face, I felt no satisfaction. I had gotten my revenge. The damage she had caused to herself was more than enough. And yet, all I felt was an emptiness. The revenge, while sweet, didn't bring me the peace I thought it would. But Amy's journey wasn't over yet. She still had to face the people she had wronged, the ones she had hurt the most. Her marriage was gone, but the real work of rebuilding her life had only just begun. And as I closed the door behind her, I couldn't help but wonder, would she ever learn from her mistakes, or would she continue down the same destructive path? Time would tell. Days passed, and despite everything that had happened, I couldn't help but think about Amy. I was relieved to have her out of my life, but a part of me couldn't completely shut the door on her. I had spent years growing up with her, dealing with her toxic behavior, trying to win her approval, and yet always falling short. Now I had finally let go. I had learned to find my own happiness, my own path, without her constant shadow looming over me. But even with that, I knew the story wasn't over. Amy had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Her marriage was shattered beyond repair, and her reputation had taken a serious hit. I couldn't help but feel a tinge of sadness for the woman who had once been my sister, the woman I once loved, the woman who had become a stranger to me. It wasn't long before Amy reached out again. This time, though, it wasn't to beg for forgiveness. It was a message that was different, one that, for the first time in years, showed a glimpse of the person I had always hoped she could be. I'm trying to change. I know I've hurt so many people, including you, and I know that I'll never be able to fix trying. I'm going to therapy. I'm trying to be a better person. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted to tell you that I'm trying. When I read that message, I sat there for a long time, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to reject her, to remind her of everything she had done, to let her suffer the consequences of her actions. But another part of me wondered, was this real? Was this just another manipulation? Could I ever trust her again? As the days turned into weeks, I watched from a distance. Amy did the one thing I never thought she would. She took responsibility for her actions. She started showing up to family events, trying to make amends with relatives she had alienated for years. She even reached out to Trevor, the husband she had destroyed with her lies, and began to rebuild some semblance of their friendship, though the relationship was beyond repair. She also started volunteering, working with troubled youth and attending group therapy. There was no doubt in my mind that Amy had hit rock bottom. But this time, instead of trying to drag everyone else down with her, she was trying to pick herself up. She was still broken, still lost in many ways, but she was trying. I didn't hear from Amy for a while after that. She started showing signs of growth, small victories that most people wouldn't notice. She apologized to old friends, went to therapy every week, and made an effort to rebuild her career. But the most surprising part of it all was that she had started to find peace within herself. Then, one day when I least expected it, she showed up at my door. This time, there was no grand apology or tears, no desperate plea for forgiveness. It was just Amy, standing there with a quiet smile. "I've been thinking a lot about you," she said, her voice calm. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for pushing me to face myself, even when I hated you for it. You were right all along. I had to hit rock bottom to understand what I had become. I'm sorry for everything." For a moment, I stood there, stunned. This wasn't the Amy I had known. This was a woman who had faced her demons head-on. But the anger that had consumed me for so long had started to fade, replaced with something I hadn't expected. Forgiveness. I don't know what to say. I finally managed to reply. "I'm glad you're finding peace, Amy. I really am. But you can't expect me to just forget everything that happened. What you did, how you treated me, how you treated everyone, those scars don't go away easily." She nodded. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying." I didn't say anything more. There was nothing left to say. We had both changed, and our relationship would never be the same again. But as she left, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure, a sense that, after everything, Amy was finally learning from her mistakes. The road ahead for her would be long, filled with struggles and setbacks, but she had made the first step toward redemption. And as for me, I had finally learned to live for myself, to trust my own path, and to know that no matter what, I was no longer defined by Amy's actions. My life, my marriage, and my happiness were mine to own, and no one could take